Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Earlier today, we got the announcement of the new DLC, The Shadow and the Blade, coming to Total War Warhammer 2. And we got a whole bunch of information. I did an initial reaction to the trailer. Check the top right-hand corner if you want to see my thoughts on that. But in this video, I thought we'd just break down all the information we'd had, take a look at some of the units we're going to be getting in the new DLC pack, and seeing what we sort of think of it and what we think of kind of the pack proposition as a whole. So, starting off with Malus Darkblade, a hugely popular character in the Warhammer world. A series of novels are based on his life and adventures. Malus was a dark elf who essentially became possessed by a demon of chaos and is trying to fight off, stave off that possession, to put a very, very long story short. That's kind of the idea behind Darkblade himself. Now, in the DLC, it looks like that mechanic is going to play out, as he is going to have a mechanic whereby Zakan, the demon who possesses him, is going to whisper in his ear, and if you follow the demon's whispers, it looks like they'll be kind of mission-based, and you'll be able to unlock rewards in terms of items and money and the like if you listen to the whispers of the demon. It also looks like you're going to have one of the cities in Nagaroth, but not necessarily be starting there. So in the Steam page, it tells us that you'll be starting far away on an expedition along with a Black Ark, but you will still maintain possession of Hagreth, which is, if you don't remember, a little bit south of the capital of the Dark Elves. It looks like you'll have a choice early on, at least according to the Steam page, that you'll be able to either keep that city, or you can give it up and then just play the expedition and forget about managing stuff back home. So it seems like that will be a kind of diverging path for your campaign as Malus Darkblade. In terms of his items, it looks like he's going to get his trusty Cold One Spite. He is going to have the Warp Sword of Cain, and he will apparently be able to transform into the demon that possesses him. Now, the best guess is the demon that possesses him will look like, in the trailer, his kind of white-haired version, as that's him conversing with the demon inside him. In terms of the other units we're getting in this DLC, apart from Malus himself, we are getting High Beastmasters. This was a missing general in the Dark Elf roster. It's good to see them. Not necessarily great thematically in terms of dealing with Malus and the Beastmasters themselves, but there we go. That's what we're getting. They will be predominantly anti-large, and one has to imagine, because they're called Beastmasters, they'll have some kind of traits that allow them to do well with some of the larger beasts in the Dark Elf roster. The other unit we're getting are the Masters themselves, very similar to the Nobles in the High Elf roster. They're just kind of lesser nobles, can't be generals, but they will be probably melee focused, one has to imagine. And it looks like they'll be given some anti-large properties as well. The Scourgerunners are kind of like apprentice Beastmasters in the lore. They're also dealing with trapping and capturing large animals. But it looks like they will be armed with a harpoon, so maybe a missile focus there. In the tabletop, if I remember correctly, what the harpoon used to actually do is you could get a large creature and actually move it around the board a little bit. So that was a fun little aspect on the tabletop of the Scourgerunner Chariots. And we're also getting the Bloodwrack Medusas. Yes, the Medusas. I thought we'd get these with Helbrun, but it looks like we are getting them this time round. And the Medusas will have a powerful ranged attack, as well as be good in melee. And it looks like they will cause both fear and terror as well, because let's face it, a giant Medusa looking at you is pretty scary. From the screenshots, it looks like these guys will be single units rather than sort of a pack of Medusas running around the battlefield. As well as the single Medusas, it looks like we are getting the Bloodwrack Shrine. Now, this looks a lot like the Shrine of the Hag Queens, but it kind of was on the tabletop as well. It's the exact same model, they just put something different on top. So it looks like that's what the Medusa we're getting, and this shrine will have auras around it, and it was just described on the Steam page as the Aura of Agony and the Aura of Ardor. So those are the units. There are a couple of regiments of renowns. I believe the Scourgerunner Chariot is getting one that throws nets, and they'll be able to slow down enemies. Probably work like a spell, if I was to guess. And then we also have the Regiment of Renown for the Medusa, which has an area of effect ability. So that'd be quite cool in close quarter combat if you're looking to get away with that. And there's also a Regiment of Renown of Harpies that look like they'll be given something not unlike the hunger that the vampires have. The more damage they do, the more they'll be able to regenerate. It looks like, according to the Steam page. So, a few more Regiments of Renown, those other units, filling some big voids in the Dark Elf roster. A lot of different uses for them as well, potentially. So, can't wait to get our hands on those Dark Elves. Moving on, we have the Deathmaster himself, Snitch. Now, Snitch will have a couple of his own campaign tropes, it looks like. He will be able to take out clan contracts, so the idea that the other clans hire him, and it looks like this will give you a whole bunch of items, maybe some food, and also reduce the cost of specialized units from other clans. So that looks like an interesting mechanic from the campaign there. It also looks like he'll be able to do deeds with a 100% success rate that can get you food, and it says that the Deathmaster himself can even burn down cities. So a cool new mechanic, it looks like, on the overworld for the Skaven, if you are playing as Clan Eschin. And it looks like we are also going to get his abilities, which apparently he can knock down the armor of opponent by 50% by merely coming into contact with them. So that could be hugely helpful. A lot of kind of close quarter combat lord sniping potentially there. Or even just going up, hitting them, reducing their armor, and then running away. That could be a legit strategy for the Deathmaster. And he will also, of course, being an assassin, have Vanguard and Stalk. There's also a new Assassin General, who of course has Vanguard and Stalk as well, and it looks like he'll also get Concealment Bombs. May also, don't know, but probably be tied to Clan Eschin, so probably give them a boost in some of their areas. And moving on from the Assassin Lord, we also have the Eschin Sorcerer with the Lore of Stealth. Now, the Lore of Stealth is something new in the game with this DLC, I believe, and the Lore of Stealth wasn't widely used on the tabletop. It did have rules and magic, and I can't remember off the top of my head whether that was in the role-playing game or whether that was maybe a supplement, but there was a Lore of Stealth knocking around back in the day, so I imagine that's where Creative Assembly got most of their inspiration from. Now, moving on, we also have the Eschin Triads. Now, I actually thought this was a made-up unit when I was reading the DLC information, but one of my users helpfully pointed out that it was actually a unit in one of the supplements for the tabletop game, but they were actually a unit of several assassins. But it looks like they're kind of taking that concept and running with it, making them a kind of unit of post-apprentice assassins who get together as a unit and carry around some spears. So we can see them in the bottom left of this image here. Should be an interesting unit, and they will also have Stalk and Vanguard to kind of get around those flanks, really do some damage on some potentially vulnerable units there. Poisoned Wind Mortars. These are Poisoned Wind Globadiers on a massive scale, huge poison glass balls flying through the air, exploding. I imagine they'll do the same kind of damage as the Poisoned Wind Globadiers, just much, much larger. So a very handy unit to have, probably the most practical unit, particularly for things like sieges and things like that the Skaven probably are getting in this DLC in terms of gaps they had in their roster in how to deal with stuff. We always had the catapult, but mortars are quite helpful as well. We also get the Warp Grinder teams. Now, these guys are fun. They have big drill bits at the front. It looks like we saw in the trailer, and they spell it out in the Steam page as well, that these guys will actually be able to attack settlement walls, and they'll be mainly doing a lot of armor-piercing damage, it looks like. So, fun to have them filling the gap in the roster and making an appearance. A semi-iconic unit, I'd say, within the Skaven ranks. There, making an appearance in Total War Warhammer 2. The Skaven are also getting a few regiments of renown. They are getting a group of Eschin Triads who will have the ability to launch a decoy regiment so they can kind of escape, run off, and do some damage elsewhere. There's also a Regiment of Renown unit of Poisoned Wind Mortars, which will have air burst, so damage over a much wider area, it looks like, for those guys, potentially being a lot more devastating than the regular group, with their bombs exploding a little bit over the enemy. And we've seen air burst, I believe with the Tomb Kings, there had a Regiment of Renown of the Shapti Archers that had an air burst function as well. And we have the unit of Renown of Death Runners coming, and they are going to have armor-piercing damage, as well as having a kind of dodge, making them hard to hit. Maybe a physical resistance or something like that will play out as, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. So that's about it for both of the armies in Total War Warhammer 2. A good selection. I'd say, from just looking at the units they've picked, they're struggling a little bit with theming at this stage with these two armies. For example, the Poisoned Wind Globadier and the Grinder you could argue fall much more into Clan Scryer territory than Clan Eschin territory. So you can look at that and go, thematically there's a bit of an issue there. And again, Malus with, I suppose there's not really a huge theme you could carry on with him, but getting the Master maybe fits into that, but the Beastmaster, the Scourgerunner Chariot, the Medusas, a little bit less on the nose, I'd say, but a good put together, and they are filling gaps and iconic units within both of those armies. So good to see. More is always better, and it looks like it's good quality modeling and stuff. My only complaint on the modeling is there is one screenshot in the Steam page where Mouse's head looks a bit big. But apart from that, I'm pretty happy with the DLC so far, as it looks great, and can't wait to get a look at it. We also have news on the free DLC Legendary Lord, which is Réponse de Lyonnaise. Now, Réponse is an interesting character in the Total War Warhammer lore. She lived around 500 years ago, fought off a chaos invasion in the northern part of Bretonnia, and became the Duchess of Lyonnaise itself. Now, it looks like we're going to get her as a legendary lord, which will be a lot of fun, and if you'd like to know a bit more about her story, do check out my Missing Bretonnian Legendary Lords video, popping up in the top right-hand corner now, or you'll find a link in the description below. But apart from that, guys, that's kind of all the news. Happy with the units. Waiting to see how they perform on the battlefield, but as always, a huge thank you for listening, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright, guys?